Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never practice nunchucks in a crowded room. Never eat chole before a road trip. Always take your shirt off before you iron it. Don't take a call near a swimming pool. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
For many hours, Noor Hussein's body lay on the street near the 0 point roundabout. Shrouded by tear gas smoke, his stomach punctured by a bullet fired by police. "Let tyranny die," read the Bengali words painted in white on the young man's glistening brown skin. "Let democracy be free." Then, late that evening in 1987, Noor's body was driven to a police station and consigned to an unmarked grave. Edited by martial law censors, local media chose not to carry the now iconic photographs of the Awami League activists' last moments. "They will kill you for what you have inscribed on your chest," then leader of the opposition, Sheikh Hasina'a recalled having told Noor when she spotted him in the crowd around her car. "Appa, you just bless me," Noor replied. "I will sacrifice my life to free democracy." Later, Prime Minister Hasina's government would honour Noor with a postage stamp and an annual memorial day. General Hussain Muhammad Ershad, the military ruler Noor gave his life to bring down, apologized to his family and for a time looked after their financial needs. 14 years after her son was killed though, a year into Sheikh Hasina's second term as Prime Minister, Noor's mother Mariam Bibi said this: "I still don't see anything for which my son died." Fleeing from her homeland, Hasina might have wondered how history would remember the more than 400 people killed in the last days of her reign. The police officers beaten to death by angry mobs, the guests who died when the 5-star Zabir International Hotel was set alight, the young students and activists who, just like Noor, were prepared to give their lives for change. Through the 2 decades she held power, Hasina helped pull millions out of poverty and crushed a jihadist movement that once threatened to push Bangladesh into war. The Prime Minister, though, began to slowly transform into the very tyrants she had reviled. This script has repeatedly played out since the birth of Bangladesh and goes to the heart of its tormented struggle to become a nation. Facing the cannons of the East India Company, the bamboo fortress of Narkel Beria held out for just 3 hours. The citadel of Emperor Mir Nisar Ali, as the bare-faced boxer turned messiah, like calling himself, lived on in the memory of many generations though. Early in the 19th century, historian Dilip Chattopadhyay has recorded, the millenarian Islamic movements of Nisar Ali and Muhammad Mohsin al-Din Ahmad proclaimed the coming of a new order in conformity with the words of the Quran, rejecting everything from Hindu influences to ownership and taxes. Lazy pop media caricatures of Bangladesh's political life sometimes cast it as a two-way, irreducible confrontation between secularism and Islam. The story is far, far more complex though. Like in Pakistan, Islam has been the language of both power and resistance. The religious rebellions of the 19th century, scholar Atis Dasgupta has explained, mobilized the resentments of poor, mainly Muslim peasants against predominantly Hindu zamindars and moneylenders. To compete with the new class of English-educated, mainly Hindu elites who emerged in urban areas under colonial rule, East Bengal's Muslim middle class also began forming itself into religious and cultural organizations. The build-up to partition saw these sentiments harden into support for the Muslim League, who the middle class thought could bring them benefits. Linguistic nationalism in East Bengal, though, wasn't a rejection of religion. It comfortably coexisted with Islamic consciousness. Early Bengali nationalist writing drew many of its metaphors and concepts from the idioms and institutions of Islam, the historian Ahmad Kamal has observed. Kamal notes that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Hasina's father and the founding patriarch of Bangladesh, critiqued the new Pakistan in terms identical to the ones Islamists use. When shall we get an ideal ruler like Hazrat Omar? When will the era of the four caliphs come back? He wrote. The decline of the Muslim League in East Pakistan beginning in the 1950s, political scientist Ali Riaz has noted in his authoritative history of Bangladesh, did come about in the midst of a decline of the popularity of Islamic symbols in the public space. This did not, however, mean some kind of radical secularism was ascendant. East Bengal landlords, Riaz argued, had largely migrated to India, undermining the basis of the communal conflict that had fed the problem. Thus, he argues, the relative deprivation of the people of East Pakistan could no longer be attributed to Hindu landowners, but only to a nation-state which was hell-bent on identifying itself as the protector of Islam. The main thing American President Richard Nixon told Secretary of State Henry Kissinger as the genocide in East Pakistan gathered momentum at the end of March 1971 is to keep cool and do nothing. The previous week, Pakistani troops had slaughtered pro-independence students and faculty in the erstwhile Dhaka University. Large parts of the city had been bombed. In one village, an American diplomat recorded the army, I quote, lined up people from their houses and shot down the lines, killing close to 600. Figures like Jamaat-e-Islami leader Delawar Hussain Saidi, who worked for the state-backed death squads responsible for some of the worst war crimes, were to be rehabilitated and rewarded in the new Bangladesh. And it's worth asking how that came about. Although Mujib ensured secularism was written into the new constitution in 1972, he was also concerned about ceding ideological space to the religious right wing. The country's new leader, scholar Samia Haq notes, was careful to begin public speeches with a ritual invocation of God's name, and his talks remained infused with religious imagery. Following the passage of the constitution in November 1972, Mujib led the country's assembly in Islamic prayer. Even more substantial concessions were soon made to public piety. The state's financial support for Islamic seminaries or madrasas increased dramatically. The Islamic Academy, which had been banned in 1972 because of its pro-Jamaat-e-Islami postures, was revived under a new name. Later, Bangladesh participated in the Islamic Summit held in Lahore in 1974 and helped establish the Islamic Development Bank. The commitment to secularism, moreover, proved to have weak foundations. The regime of General Ziaur Rahman, the liberation war hero who came to power after Mujib's assassination in 1975, deleted secularism from the constitution and mandated absolute faith in Allah instead. Islam was rapidly re-entrenched in education and in public life. Hussein Ershad, who took power after another coup in 1982, declared Islam the state religion. Though the religious parties like the Jamaat-e-Islami never came close to actually winning an election, their organizational structure gave them heft and influence. Following the election of Prime Minister Khalida Zia in 1991, religion became ever more embedded in the power structure. Figures in her Bangladesh National Party are even alleged to have aided Harkatul Jihad Islami terrorists stage a 2004 attack against Awami League members. Like her father, Hasina also cultivated Islamists, seeking to deny her opponents a monopoly on religious issues. The government conceded several demands made by the Hifazat-e-Islam Bangladesh, a clerical organization, among them tightening punishment for purported blasphemers and recognizing seminary qualifications as equivalent to university degrees. Literary texts considered to be offensive to some believers were ruthlessly cut out from school books, and a supposedly heretical statue of a sari-clad lady of justice was removed from the Supreme Court. Less than a year after independence, the economist Mohiuddin Alamgir watched, I quote, streams of hungry people, men, women, and children, who were nothing but skeletons who trekked into towns in search of food. Few survived, he recorded. I myself saw an average of 3 to 5 unclaimed bodies a day in August on my way to office, which was only a 5-minute walk. Mujib's government blamed the disaster on floods, anthropologist Willem van Schendel has written, but it was clear the real causes were poor administration and massive corruption. The government of Mujib, the liberator, never recovered its legitimacy. Facing attacks from Maoists in several districts, the new government increasingly turned to repression. In December 1974, Mujib proclaimed a state of emergency and dismantled what little remained of the constitution the next year by instituting a one-party state with its own party militia. Even the coup against Mujib, though, couldn't fix the problem. General Zia set up the Bangladesh National Party, which is now led by his wife Khalida, but ended up being assassinated by rivals inside the military after surviving a staggering 29 coup attempts. Ershad, scholar Sarah Tasneem Shahabuddin observes, succeeded in bribing his colonels to remain loyal, handing out various goodies, but proved unable to survive the combined opposition of Hasina and Khalida. Their own commitment to democracy, in turn, proved ephemeral. The core problem is that Bangladesh's politicians just haven't been able to build a party system that can both effectively govern and uphold democratic norms. Though Hasina was hailed for economic policies which dramatically transformed Bangladesh, the strains caused by the pandemic led to the unraveling of the country's growth story. Since there was no opposition able to draw and shape public anger, she resorted to authoritarianism, and that authoritarianism proved unable to accommodate the rage brewing in the country's towns and the villages. Islamists, it's true, have had a role in the violence that has dethroned her. But so have secularists, the rural poor, the urban middle class, and of course students. Exactly like the movement in which Noor gave his life in 1987. Little imagination is needed to understand why the new government in Bangladesh will also struggle. Lacking political reach and legitimacy, technocratic leaders just don't have the capital to persuade the people of the need for deep and obviously painful reforms. The most organized force in the country, the religious parties, will seek to use this vacuum to expand their authority. Almost certainly, Hasina's fall, just like her rise, represents one more false dawn, not light at the end of the tunnel for the beleaguered people of Bangladesh. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm a contributing editor at ThePrint. Thank you for watching this episode of Security Code.